I don't know about you, but I am in the mood to decorate all the things for Christmas. So let's make some things. I got my Sonnets Makers box just in time, and it really inspired me to do a bunch of vintage Santa items. So I'm taking this washboard. I've had this for quite a while and it's just sat here looking at me because I haven't known exactly what I wanted to do with it. I don't think this is old, although the wood looks old and the finish looks old. On the galvanized part, there is some print, like a stamp from the manufacturer of the actual galvanized piece. So I don't know, you guys. So don't be mad at me for painting this and upcycling this. It definitely needed something done to it. So what I am doing is taking the Fancy Farm Girl out of the box and giving this two coats. And on one side of this, I'm leaving the galvanized part blank. And on the other side of it, I'm going to paint the galvanized part as well. What I want to do is make this so that it can be used both for the holiday season and then you can flip it over and have it year round out. And it turned out so stinking cute. So we're again are going to do two coats and then we're going to give this a little bit of a distress at the end, but wait until you see what I do with this. Sonnet always includes an adorable napkin in with our box, and that's what I chose to use on this piece. Now, most napkins have multi-ply on them, so you do need to separate them. I find just getting my fingers wet and pulling it apart at a corner usually does the job just fine. And then I usually save that blank part and use it for texture on other pieces. So I'm just going to use one little square of this. I'm not going to use the whole thing, so I'm going to cut that out. And then we're going to decoupage this on. While I'm doing this, let me introduce myself. My name is Sandra, and I'm the owner and creator here at Midwest Charm. I specialize in repurposed, upcycled, vintage home decor and furniture, as well as all of your crafty DIY needs. We carry DIY paint. We carry Sweet Pickins milk paint, Roycycled treasures, Connie Lines and Designs, and Iron Orchid Designs. You can find us on all of the social medias as well as the website www.midwestcharm.co. If you can see for this piece, I am anchoring this in the middle. So we are working with a napkin, which they do tend to be a bit more fussy and finicky. You can't overwork them. And so what we're going to do is start with that anchor strip in the middle. And then I did go over this on the top, but really you only need to go over with, or on the bottom. You really only need to go over this on the top. I'm working from the middle up and then I'll do the middle down. And if you just have a good amount of decoupage medium, and I'm using crystal clear chandelier liquid patina, you can just go over this and it does a fantastic job. Now, as you can see on the bottom, it's not done yet. And I'm just going to get my brush with some medium on it. And then we're going to go from the middle out or the middle down and it just does a fabulous job. Um, I mentioned below where you can find us. We have a storefront as well where all these items can be purchased, as well as the items that I flip. And that is in East Central Minnesota. The address is in the description, as well as all the other stuff I mentioned before. And any of the DIY products or Iron Orchid designs can be purchased on my website. While the Roycycled Treasures papers are exclusive to Sonnet's box, I do carry a good amount of her line in my store as well. Here's a little sneak peek of both sides of this, and let's start project number 2. So this is a little mini clipboard. I picked this up when I was in Appleton for Sonnet's retreat, and this is going to get a coat of I'm pulling this up quick, a Parchment Fusion on the front. We're going to do two coats, and on the back we're going to do ash, and it only took one coat to cover that. Now you can see I'm having to hold this up. You can use a zip tie to clip this in the upward position as you're working on that, and it's so much easier. as well as for drying in the works. And I do recommend that. I just didn't happen to have any at the store. We had used them and left them in the car, and I didn't have that particular vehicle on me that day. But we are going to go in and get this finished up. And it's very easy to use this paint. It's an all-in-one. It has a sealer already in it, and it self-levels, so it's usually very smooth, no paint brush strokes or anything. Now, I'm gonna be fully upfront with y'all. I should have sprayed this with shellac before I did anything because this still ended up yellowing my paper that I put on here. And I was so super sad because this was, I think, my favorite paper of the batch this time. I was so excited to get this. I was gonna use this as a gift, but now I'm not so sure. I did a fix on it, and you will see that in the final shots, but it just did not have that beautiful, crisp, clean white like you would normally get when you're decoupaging. So, you guys, if you're doing up an old clipboard, make sure you guys shellac that first and seal in any of those tannins. You don't want to have bleed through like I did on the lighter color. I'm using Connie's paper, the Painted Photographer rice paper in winter birch on this. And because this has the little clip for the cutting board, you just have to work this a little bit slower. So what I did was laid this down. I cut the two sides out, and then I just ran my finger up underneath the clip to know exactly where this needed to be cut at. And I'm cutting that part out. I am going to save that remainder part because there is a little bit on the top above the clip that I'll have to cut off and decoupage down too. But now this should slide up perfectly and be ready to be decoupaged down. And I am using, again, my liquid patina, and I go in and do those top little two parts that I on each side of that clip and do those, and then I lift up that clip and I start doing it like I normally would. I put that layer down, I smooth it out. This is rice paper, so it obviously goes on so much smoother because it's got that thicker weight and all those fibers to it. And I do go in and get this all decoupage down. And like I said, during the drying process, it did end up yellowing a bit. My fix for that is I did go in with some medium. Let me look up what it was really quick. I did go in with the Tim Holtz Distress Texture Twinkle and the Distress Snowflakes Glitter on top of the snow on the bottom and on the white parts of the birch. I just used a palette knife to apply it to both so it had some texture, and then sprinkle the glitter part on top of where I placed that texture. And that covered it up. It didn't make it white like it is on the paper, but it's good enough. And I tied a bit of can't remember, organza ribbon in that beautiful green color to this to finish it up. And I'll give you guys a final reveal at the very end, but I will give you a quick sneak peek as it's drying. I love this paper. Project number 3 is a two-parter. Now, you may have seen me use these tree frames before. I will get these loaded up on the website and sell what I have remaining. And what I'm doing is I'm going in with the Old and Gray liquid patina. And as I'm looking at this, I'm realizing I really want it a bit darker. So I am mixing my Old and Gray liquid patina with a little bit of the darkened decrepit liquid patina, and it's probably about a 3-to-1 ratio. Use however much you want to get it to the light or the shade that you want it to be. Obviously, the more of that darker decrepit you use, the darker it'll be. I just poured it into a little condiment dish, stirred it up with one of my popsicle sticks, and then applied it like I normally would. And then when I was done, I mixed up way too much. I just put a cap on this and it actually saved just fine. I used it on another project the next day and it turned out perfect too. So I just stir that all up and then we're going to apply it like we normally would. And I will give you a quick little view of this when it's all dried up. So for this liquid patina, you're going to apply this like you normally would. And the reason I'm doing this is because one, it will stain up my wood and make it look aged and older than what it is. And two, when I paint over the top of this and distress back, it'll give us that barnwood look rather than the bright, fresh, clean, new wood. And what I'm going to do is for both of my Christmas trees, I'm going to put a coat of this on each piece, on each side, and let it dry. And I'm going to make sure I'm not wiping anything off. Sometimes I will do that if I want a lighter look to it, but I'm literally going in, letting this dry as is. And like I said, it seals the wood and stains it. And it turned out to be the perfect color. I'm very, very happy with my decision to mix my color rather than just stay with the original gray. This just gave it the most perfect look. In fact, the next day, the project I did was an old barn ladder for like a hayloft, and it was too tall for the area I wanted it for, so we cut it. And the remaining shorter piece I brought in. That's outside and I hang stuff on it. The shorter one we brought in, and on the newly cut part, I put this same color on that end, and you can't tell a difference from that end to the sides, so it matched perfectly. And here is a quick sneak peek of it as it's drying all up, and it's beautiful. I love it. It was exactly what I was looking for. Then we're going to go ahead and take that white swan that came in our box, and we're going to paint. Normally, I would do both sides in the same color. You want to, on these thinner pieces of wood, make sure that you do paint both sides. When you paint one side and it dries, it'll warp that wood and it might not fit as well into your frame. So I always make sure that I paint both sides. Now, for this, I'm going to be decoupaging the white side and the frame is going to be painted a different color. So I'm going to actually paint the back side at the very end in the same color as the frame. So that will help counteract any of the warping that we have. So we're painting one side white and then the other side in the color that we're doing the frame. And then we're going to repeat the process on the bigger one as well. So these are two different sizes of the frames. I don't have the measurements on me, but I will make sure to load that information into my description. So you guys have that information in there and if you should want to purchase any of these frames. Another quick tip for you is when you are painting this really dry wood like this, if you want your paint to go on a little bit smoother, just give it a quick mist with your misting bottle and then paint over it and it glides on like butter. It goes on so smoothly. I did not do that. I also only did one coat on each of these. It was not necessarily necessary to do that second coat. While these are drying, I am taking out my Roycycled decoupage papers that came in the box. These again are exclusive to Sonnet's boxes. She does have different boxes, so if you just want the papers or you just want the paint or you just want her digital downloads, she has all those as well. So make sure you check out the link in my description for her boxes. You also, with that, get to bypass the wait list and get moved immediately into a box. Now, this second paper, it is called North Pole plaids, you get two, and I didn't know that till I opened it. I was so excited. We're going to be using the one on the left. I really, when I saw that in the package, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. So I'm cutting that piece apart, and then I'm putting my board underneath it so that I can measure exactly how much of this paper I will need so that I can use as little as possible of the paper and save the rest of this. So I'm going to cut that out and trim it down a little bit. And then I am going to go over both of these boards with my fingers and really press out the pattern that I need so that I'm not wasting anything. So I'm going to be picking out exactly what I want. And I know I want a Santa on there. I'm just trying to figure out how to best fit one on there. And I really liked that guy in the right-hand corner. But I also really wanted to save that number 25 and the postage stamp up there. So what you'll see me do is cut those off and set them aside because I am applying them to this board as well. So I'm just making sure that everything lines up exactly how I want it to be to save the most of the other images on this master board. And this one is called Santa's Greetings. So just gonna carefully cut around these images so that I can save these. And then I'm going to go up the sides and cut off that 25 and the postage. And then we are going to get ready to apply these to our boards. And for our decoupage medium, I am going to be using our liquid patina again. And what I'm going to do here is mist my paper so we can stretch those fibers on both of these. And then we are going to sit down and we are going to get these put on here with our medium. So I'm just making sure it's all lined up and I don't have any blank spaces. Now I know the frame will cover up anything that's really close to the edge, but because I misted this and stretched those fibers, I don't have any issues with it not fitting on there. And we're gonna go ahead and start at the top of this tree and put some of our liquid patina down, smooth the top out with our hand and make sure there's no wrinkles, and then go over that with another coat on top. You'll see when I do the smaller of these that I figured out if you start on the bottom, the bigger part first, it's so much easier. So save yourself the hassle. Don't start at the top of the tree, start at the base of the tree. So much easier. But hindsight's 2020, right? So we're gonna go ahead and finish this up. It turns out just fine, nice and smooth. It dried beautifully. I was thrilled with it. I do go in and you'll see that we add the part on the board and then we smooth out and I'm able to lift it up and manipulate it just fine. I don't have any issues with that because it's all damp already. It's such an easy process to get this to be nice and smooth. Once I get this initial part all on my board, I am going to go in with a little bit of water and a paintbrush and go around that 25 and around the little postage stamp. And honestly, I can't remember if I did it with a paintbrush or if I ended up just doing it with my hands and tearing it. But I'm also going to decoupage both of those onto this board. I really wanted to have that 25 on here because I loved it so much with that Santa. So I want to make sure that I'm able to do that. And you can see I just picked that up with no problem and I was able to smooth it all back down. And then I'm going to go in with one more coat of our liquid patina. And then we're going to work on those additions to our board. And I am able to just go in. I did wet this down. I just didn't film it. And I'm tearing it so that we have a jagged edge because it'll go on smoother and not be so obvious that I am putting this on there. So just trying to decide where I want to place it, where it will pop the best. And I just add a little bit more of that liquid patina. I place this down and smooth it out onto there with my brush, and it is perfectly adhered. And then we're going to do the same thing with this little postage stamp. And then we're going to set this aside to completely dry. It needs to be 100% dry before we move on to any other steps. So we're going to repeat that exact same process on this piece. I did missed it one more time. It had dried out a little bit while I was working on that other piece. And you see, I flipped this over, learned my lesson, and started on this side first because it made it so much easier to control and smooth everything out because it had a bigger base to hold the paper. So it just was so much easier to work with. And then we're going to smooth that down with our brush. And then we are going to just lift up the other end and continue all the way down. And you guys, so much easier, right? All right, and then you make sure you guys get enough of the medium on the edges and the corners because that's where it's going to have the hardest time adhering to. And also any little relief cuts, just a little snip in towards on that excess paper, in towards those points really does help to relax that paper and allow it when it dries to seal up and not pull up instead because it can do that. Then we're going to take out Connie's Mary St. Nick, and I am going to, I mean, normally I'd call this fussy cutting, but we're going to call it fussy tearing instead. And we're going to go right around the edge of Santa here, and then I'm going to go in and tear with my fingers to pull all that excess up. And when I do this, I'm leaving some little fibers sticking out, and I'm okay with that because it gives Santa a beautiful little halo effect when we apply him to this plaid paper. And we're just going to go and carefully tear all the way around. And I am going to tear off on the sides and the bottom, the white framing on there that you see. So that part will come off as well. And then we are going to make sure that he pops off of our paper by flipping him over and painting the backside in our white swan. And then we're going to let that dry. Once those are completely dry, we're going to sand the edges off so that they're nice and smooth. And then we are going to go in with our Sweet Pickins milk paint and we're going to mix that with water. So you're going to add your water to your cup and you're going to use equal amounts of water to equal amounts of the powder. You're going to stir that up really good and then set that aside to absorb all those pigments for about a good 10 minutes. If you don't like the consistency, you can always add a little bit more of the mixture to the water. And for all of the parts that we are painting right now, the backs of our pieces and the frame, we're going to be doing 2 coats of the Sweet Pickins milk paint in basil. And we are going to be hitting it with a dryer to dry each part of this in between. Now you do want to be careful because the other side's already finished that you're not applying too much to this and you're not shifting your board at all because you could shift it into some of the paint that you have on the table. I do have these sitting on the plastic little sleeves that your papers come in and then I like right there, it shifted on me. But because the other side is sealed in and dry, I'm able to wipe off anything that leaks through. You just need to do it right away because milk paint will harden and you're not going to be able to get it off at that point. So let's get the frames done too. Now, because these have been sealed up with that liquid patina, this paint goes on so smoothly. And we are going to do all the sides. So we're going to paint as much as we can this way, and then we are going to paint, wait for it to dry, flip it over, and then paint the other side as well so that all of the angles, all of the sides of this are getting painted. Because of how these sit on the final result, they do need all of those little itsy bits cleaned. I mean, not cleaned, I'm sorry, do need to be painted. So The one step I don't get on film for you is once this paint dries, I do go in with a 220 grit sandpaper, sand everything nice and smooth, distress the edges, and then get off any chipping that happened. No real chipping happened, but I did get some good crackle in this. And you know it needs sealed. So I used Sweet Pickens oil wax and I sealed these up. And because it took so long to dry, my final pictures aren't the best of these two pieces. So I apologize ahead of time, but you can see exactly how beautiful these are. When applying the oil wax, you need to make sure that the ends that are going to be glued do not have that oil wax on it, or it's not gonna adhere as well as you want it to. So I do leave certain ends of it not covered in the oil wax. And then I just use my Tight Bond Quick and Thick to glue up all of the pieces, and you'll see here in our final result exactly how these would be, except the base would be glued onto them as well. And now for our final result.
So what did you think? I love getting Sonnet's box. It just inspires me so much, especially to step out of my comfort zone sometimes. And I really, really love the items that I created today. And I can't wait to hear what you think about them. Thank you for watching. If you aren't subscribed yet, hit that little subscribe button below for me. If you liked my video, I would really appreciate it. It really helps out small little businesses like mine. And thanks again for watching, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.